Welcome, race fans, back to Pit Stop TV. We're live to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch tonight, as has become normal. Cole Fralick and Emerson Ardon with me in the booth tonight. I'm Major Cardinale IV, and this is Pit Stop TV's live coverage of the SRCA Pro F2000 series from Lime Rock Park. We join you tonight in the great Northeast, up in New England. I gotta think here, Connecticut. I totally spaced on where this place is located. This is round number 10 of 15 for the SRCA's Pro F2000 division. Now, a track that was just recently rescanned and put into the iRacing service, but has actually been on iRacing for a while. Of course, we have the older pavement, the older layout of Lime Rock Park. Not much has changed, just widening some corners, adding some chicanes here and there, and of course, putting down that nice, beautiful new pavement these guys are working around so far in qualifying. And Cole, we've been made aware of a couple of new driver rivalries, not even new necessarily, but definitely heating up between a couple of series leaders. And as we come to Lime Rock Park, those two drivers have been instructed to stay away from each other, but go ahead and tell us more about that.
Well, the two drivers in question are Oldest Putiglis and Scott McIntyre, who, ironically here, this is not how anything was scripted or anything, Oldest Putiglis and Scott McIntyre are currently qualified right next to each other right now, so it seems they just can't get away from each other even if they tried.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes tonight. This is a pretty fast track. There's a lot of high-speed portions on this track. It's going to be pretty easy to get close to each other.
Yeah, so as we're on board here with Scott McIntyre in qualifying, you can see some shade on the racetrack, lending itself to some fast times as McIntyre goes by a slower car. I think that was Ian Wilson possibly, up over the hill. Now, something to keep in mind here, guys, is the track temperature fluctuates a ton here with iRacing's new dynamic skybox. So right now, we're going to see a lot of fast times coming. We've already seen Harley Lewis best his previous lap time, and we saw Aldous Putiglis quickly go faster than he previously had. Now Scott McIntyre, I think, improved a little bit. No, that last time by he did not. He was about a second shy. But we see several drivers out here improving their lap times and moving up the speed charts. And as time runs out, 1 second, now 0 seconds left, and these guys will be able to complete their lap times. About a minute left to do so. This cloud cover definitely going to matter.
Yeah, a cooler racetrack is going to allow these guys to have more grip around an already very high-speed track. So we'll see these guys push the limits, and some of them may push it a little too far, but we will see what happens.
So it looks like we've lost... Yeah, we have unfortunately lost good old Cole Fralick, unfortunately. I don't know what happened to him, but we'll get him back in here without too much time. That being said, though, Oldest Putiglis jumps up from about the 6th, 7th position to 3rd place right now as more cars come across the start-finish line. It looks like your top 4 are all settled, but Donald Poole still going around the racetrack trying to complete his lap time, complete his qualifying run. Brian Antonio, well, he's in his car, but in the pit lane, so I think Donald Poole is actually the only car on the racetrack. He is the only car left on the racetrack. Donald Poole trying to best his time. He's going to end up getting caught down the back portion of the course, so that's going to do it for the SRCA Pro F2000 Series qualifying here from Lime Rock. But as we get ready to go racing for 60 laps tonight, Harley Lewis is going to be your pole sitter. We'll go ahead and, of course, walk you through your grid. Well, I was going to walk you through your grid. There we go. So Harley Lewis rolling off P1. Russ Addy to his outside. It is good to see Harley Lewis back atop the grid here. The speed charts in general. Russ Addy, again, to his outside in position number 2 for tonight's standing start. Oldest Putiglis going to roll off P3. Then it's John Morgan in the 177 car. For the back in 5th, Elijah Gracia and Daniel Falkingham give you row number 3. Then it's Scott McIntyre 7th, Spencer Madden 8th, and rounding out your top 10 will be Mark Bredbender and Donald Poole.
Starting in the 11th position, we'll have Brian Antonio, and alongside of him, we'll have Ian Wilson. P13, we'll have Victor Valley, and P14, Tom Mercier. P15, we're going to have Richard Colomb, and Justin Ford will round out our grid in P16.
So 15 cars on the racetrack tonight, it looks like, and that's actually not that bad of a field size here as we get ready to go racing from Lime Rock Park. Now, of course, this plays a very historic circuit, but getting some recent changes done to the circuit, adding some chicanes that we won't be running tonight, but definitely add something to the dynamic here at Lime Rock. Now, as everybody lines up down the Sam Posey straight again, Harley Lewis going to be rolling off from the pole position. This is a standing start as usual in the SRCA Pro F2000 series. So as we wait for everybody to grid up and roll off from the starting line, what I will say, Emerson, is we're in for a show. These Pro F2000 guys do not mess around. They usually have very even races. I would say pretty much draft battles all race long. I hear the motors winding up, getting ready to go green flag. The green flag flies, and we're off and away on the Sam Posey straight. Already an issue further back. I think that was John Morgan going in the wrong direction. It was.
I believe that was. The field will get single filed up here. Up front, we have Harvey Lewis now starting to open up a little bit of a gap already to the 111 of Russ Addy, but he'll close it back up here through the S's.
So as these guys all get sorted out down the back straightaway, Harley Lewis is going to roll away with your lead. Then it's Russ Addy, Aldous Puticlis, and Scott McIntyre a little ways back.
At the top three, they've already broken away here on the opening lap of this race. Scott McIntyre leading his little couplet. He has, I believe that would be Daniel Falkingham with him. Falkingham moved up from the 6th position up one spot already on lap number 1 of our 60-lap race tonight.
So as I was trying to mess with some graphic stuff there, unfortunately it looks like certain things not quite operating as they should. But as the race gets sorted out, Scott McIntyre into P4 and Aldous Puticlis just ahead of him. Now this is the battle you're going to watch between these two. Because if these two drivers get close together and if they have any issues, again, these drivers have been instructed to stay away from each other. They've had some run-ins, and really, not to take any sides or anything, but the race administrators just want them to stay away from each other, just stay apart, and sort things out at a later point in time because it's just not worth their time. Meanwhile, battle for the lead. Harley Lewis going to go down to the bottom side of the racetrack and protect from Russ Addy and the Aldous Puticlis 3 wide down the Sam Posey straight into turn 1, and side by side now for Puticlis and Addy as Puticlis going to roll around the top side there in turns 1 and 2. He's going to make that pass look easy, and Russ Addy going to have to sit behind in P3. Now, Russ Addy is actually the teammate to Scott McIntyre, so that's something else to keep in mind here as Puticlis battles Addy. And Addy's one of those guys that we've seen struggle for the first few races of this Pro F2000 series. I think back to New Hampshire, for example. But he's since gotten a lot stronger and is starting to get kind of into a groove pretty clearly, rolling off, P2 tonight, and now sitting in 3rd just behind Aldous Puticlis in a very early battle.
Getting stronger indeed as you see him start to snake down the front straightaway already. The race admin are going to like that move. Puticlis getting 1 car between him and Scott McIntyre. But anyway, Russ Addy trying to get right back on Aldous Puticlis. They'll follow each other right through the S's right now.
So Harley Lewis still leading your race, and I think back to Mid-Ohio as far as the last race where I saw Harley Lewis be really good. We have a car off further back. I'm not sure who that was. Looks like it might have been, I'm looking for the car. Spencer Madden around. I'm used to looking for a Marlboro paint for him. Spencer Madden around out of about turn 4 and heading down the back straightaway, and that car is junk. We'll see if we can get a better look at what he's dealing with now. Yeah, that car is jumping around, and he's just going to go ahead and call it a day. So we'll see if we can't get a replay as to what happened here with Spencer Madden. And watch the blue and black machine center of your screen as, he just caught the curb and washed out towards the outside of the racetrack, caught the wall, and, well, that was day done for him.
Yeah, these are pretty small cars, pretty close to the ground, but those curves are huge, and it really can do some damage to these guys. They're going to want to stay off these curves for most of the day as opposed to other forms of racing where you can use the curves to turn.
So as the battle for the lead rages on, trying to go ahead and fix things for you guys, and we had it for a moment. There we go. We've got it. I sorted it out. I don't know what I did. I don't know how I messed it up in the first place, but Emerson, we've got it worked out. That's why I was quiet there for a moment, so we'll ignore that now as Russ Addy and Oldest Pooticless go back at it there through turns 3 and 4. We've got a slow car to the inside. Not sure who that is, but he's got to get on the loud pedal here because these guys are coming by and they're going fast too. As, let's see. I totally lost track where I was. Scott McIntyre a little loose over the crest there up the hill. He's got Daniel Falkingham to worry about behind him. I don't think he's even concerned with that battle up ahead. Elijah Gracia putting pressure on Falkingham down the hill and out of the final corner down the San Posey straight once more. Brian Antonio, a newcomer to the series. He's currently sitting 7th place in that number 46, and he's not looking too bad either. He mentioned he's never driven these race cars, and certainly not in a race like this. So as we go on board with him here, Brian Antonio out of Pennsylvania, one of the PA posse guys, doing pretty good for himself right now. Started 11th, up to 7th, and he's certainly looking like he might have something for those guys ahead.
I was just about to say that, right? He started in the 11th position, like you alluded to, marching his way up through the grid, and he's catching that battle up in front of him. And those are some heavyweights up in front of him. It would I think mean a lot for him to get up there and gotta rough it up with these guys up front.
That it would. So as he's trying to climb his way up the running order, currently again sitting 7th place. The next car behind him he has to worry about is Donald Poole, another one of the newer names at least. I'm not sure if he's brand new, but at least a newer name. And I'm kind of surprised actually to see him do so well right now, because he was not necessarily looking the strongest through qualifying, but he's actually holding his own. He started 10th. He's up 2 spots. Granted, we've had some interesting issues there to start the race, but Donald Poole surprised me right now. Now, obviously, everybody, somebody has to finish last at the end of the night. Nobody can, well, you can't have everybody go up there and win the race, of course, Emerson. So I say that in the nicest ways for Donald Poole, who, again, wasn't all that impressive through qualifying, but right now is turning up the wick and actually has something for these guys. He's looking relatively quick. Ian Wilson and Justin Ford, the next couple of cars behind him, and he's got a big gap. Tom Mercier looks like is into the pit lane. Looks like he's had issues.
Indeed, he is into the pit lane. Yeah, a lot of these guys, contact. Daniel Falkingham gets tapped, and around he goes in traffic.
So we're getting the replay here for Tom Mercier first. Then we'll see what happens here to Daniel Falkingham. You see Mercier cut the curb, and, well, it looks like that's not even what's going to do it. Now, sideways down the downhill, and I think he just called it a day. Regardless, up to Daniel Falkingham's situation, we'll see what happens to the driver of the number 20 off into turn 1. He's got Elijah Gracia pushing up to the inside, and, well, yeah, that's where the contact is made, actually, out of turn number 2. So it wasn't into turn 1, it was out of the corner, and that's where Falkingham's going to go around. That's going to give way to a couple of drivers. Donald Poole actually jumps up over Brian Antonio for that position. Now Elijah Gracia behind both of them. So Brian Antonio actually gains 1 position, but Donald Poole, I think, gained 3 right there from 8th up into 5th. So that's an impressive way to get by that incident and come out on the better end. Meanwhile, Harley Lou is still leading your race. Aldous Pudiclus not too far back. Of course, they're coming up over the hill now as Russ Addy following him in 3rd place. Scott McIntyre, it looks like 2.3 seconds behind that group, and he's got a massive gap all the way back to Donald Poole exiting the last corner now as they're already down past the start-finish line. So this top dozen or so has already gotten themselves pretty darn spread out.
Indeed, they do. Actually, the top 7 already spread out between 7 seconds from the race leader and 7th place. Just going back to those incidents there, yeah, these are very small cars, and they're built to be light, built to be fast. And with them being so light right there in the section, the elevation change kind of catches them out. Which I think was what happened to Tom Mercier.
Yeah, absolutely. I turned a couple of practice laps myself. You can see my name on the ticker. I figured I'd go ahead and see what these cars had to offer. And they're just so hard to drive. And something that's always thrown me for a loop, because I tried to race in this league not too long ago and just didn't like the cars, couldn't drive them all that well. It just wasn't for me. The only thing I learned from that is these are hard to drive. These little Pro Mazdas are kind of working your way up the ladder technically for the open wheel series and road series, but honestly, they are really tough cars to drive. One of the biggest things is downshifting. You have to be really careful about when you downshifting these cars, Because if you still have the motor spooled up in the next gear down, I guess, if that makes any sense. So if you're at too high of a rev, how about that? When you downshift, you're going to kick that rear end out of the race car out. And that happens in other cars too, but it's just more noticeable in these things because you don't have a whole lot of downforce. Is Brian Antonio going to make a pass? No. He made the move at least to the inside here of Donald Poole. Couldn't quite get it done. Watching the battle here on the bottom of your screen. Antonio now still side by side with Poole through 3. Poole's going to go for a spin.
And that's going to do that battle right there. Yeah, he just, the same spot Tom Mercier got caught out. Just riding that inside there, the elevation change, the light of these cars, so many factors going on right there in, I believe that's turn 3 of the S's. It's just so light through there. So easy to lose control.
So Donald Poole going to get that car back situated, and these are very fast laps of 44.667. I think the only way Aldis Puteklis could have made that any better for himself running the new fastest lap of the race was if it had been a 44.666, only to match his car number. The 666, of course, as I usually refer to him. He's doing pretty good right now, sitting P2 and putting the pressure on Harley Lewis, as he always does, the car in front of him anyways. And I mentioned Mid-Ohio a few minutes ago as one of the races that stood out to me for one of the last times Harley Lewis really did good things. Well, this is looking exactly like Mid-Ohio, except I think Scott McIntyre was in Russ Addy's position. Those 3 going at it for that entirety of that race at Mid-Ohio, and then Harley Lewis and I believe Scott McIntyre battled that one out towards the end. I forget who won that one. But this time, Aldis Puteklis, after he had some kind of issue, I think it was a pit stop issue at Mid-Ohio, he's looking to avoid that tonight. Already through about a quarter of the race. We'll make it officially a quarter as they come back across the stripe down the San Posey Straight this next time around. But Aldis Puteklis, he's off to a pretty good run. And we always say that each week, I feel like, Cole, but this time we really do mean it.
Yeah, Harley been leading pretty much the whole thing here. He did lead a lot of that Mid-Ohio race that you referred to earlier, but I believe it was Aldis who actually got the best of the 3 cars in that race. And Aldis really not having to worry about Scott McIntyre this week. It looks like Scott's a little off the pace to what we're usually seeing from him. But, yeah, Aldis looks to be on the heel of Harley Lewis and possibly running some of the fastest laps of this race.
Yeah, I was just noticing here, Richard Coulomb got off track in turn 4 and went for a wild ride down. He's deep in the running order, a couple laps down, and he's out of the race. Also, Justin Ford, I believe, went off through turn number 1. Just a lot of incidents going on deeper in the pack.
And, that follows our experience here. The only other race we've broadcasted at Lime Rock was the Lucky Dog Sim Racing League with the GT4s and Audi TCRs. That follows the experience there, as now we're going to see a move for the lead. Aldis Puteklis leads across the start-finish line, and that's a new fast lap out of that driver as well. He's going to give the spot back into turn 1. But Aldis Puteklis darn near had that pass made as they went off into turn 1. Now going to try and set Harley Lewis up for a crossover, possibly through the S's. Can't quite do it as they come into turn number 4. Russ Addy a little bit loose behind them. Gets that car back under control. Now down the back, a little bit of a straightaway. It's really just a couple of, it's an S, really, as they get ready for turn 5. The compression turning up the hill over the crest. And these drivers, I will say, have done a really good job of not staying in the throttle too much. I junked, I think, 3 different virtual cars out here for practice, coming up over the crest alone. So it's definitely tough to do. Make sure you get out of the throttle at the right time and don't have the rear end spooled up as you come across it, because, of course, you lose all weight coming up over that bit of a hill. But right now, this battle looking really good as a bobble there out of Aldis Puteklis going to send him back wide and back behind Harley Lewis by a few car lengths.
Yeah, Harley, the last 2 laps coming off the final corner, is kind of darted to that inside pit wall there, but every time that's allowed Aldis to get to the side of him, so I don't know really what Harley's thinking is going into with that move. But Aldis is actually benefiting from that, but once they get to the run up to turn 1, then Aldis just does not have the preferred lane. And these Pro Mazdas, it's very hard to make a move on the outside.
Yeah, almost everything has to be perfect. Again, these cars being so aerodynamic, so technically sound, well, not especially technically sound, but these cars, they're just so close to each other. It's also a tribute to the high speed aspect of this track that slipstream is going to become a factor. You do want to be kind of in the right line coming down the downhill and down the front straightaway to kind of set yourself up for turn number 1. A couple laps ago, Scott McIntyre got off track, and now there's a huge gap between third place Russ Addy and now fourth place Elijah Gracia, down now nearly 12 seconds back off the race lead.
So as the number 16 heading in the wrong direction, he's actually down the pit lane, I think, getting service. I'm not sure if that is... Well, he's 2 laps down now. I think Scott McIntyre may have to call it there. Looking like he may have had a tow or something. As Scott McIntyre now goes 3 laps down as Harley Lewis and Aldous Puticlis buzz the start-finish line, and they go on by. It's now lap 20 of 60 for these leaders, coming up to third of the way through the race, and we're going to have to start to watch out for some pit stops as... Oh, we've had Brian Antonio stuff it into the tire barriers out of the final corner, out of the downhill. And we were talking about how good of a run he was having earlier on, Cole, and unfortunately now his great run is going to come to an end.
Yeah, unfortunately that the first start for him is going to be just mired into a pit wall. But talking about Scott McIntyre, he actually had a collision into the turn 2 tire barrier, so that's what did him in there for... But he's back out along with Spencer Madden. Both of those cars now back on the racetrack. So bad nights for the number 16 and the number 6 cars.
Yeah, in my time driving this track, I really get caught out there on that downhill right-hander that Brian Antonio had unfortunately crashed out on. I think he was just trying to carry as much speed as he could. He lost it on corner exit and not only hitting 1 tire barrier, but 2 on opposite sides of the front straightaway.
Yeah, it looked like, we watched the onboard right there, it looked like he just kind of missed the turn in a little bit. He washed out too far trying to get a wider entry to get the arc down into the corner, and he caught that grass actually on the outside of the corner, and he couldn't turn. Of course, if you're on grass, you don't have grip. So he got the grass with the left side of the race car, couldn't turn in right, and just went straight when he got to the corner, and unfortunately that's going to do him in. He's going to drop through the running order, and you see already... He's only 8th place as he's 2 laps down, so that's something to watch out for with these guys. I mentioned our previous experience with this racetrack is that there's a lot of mistakes that come out of these guys running around here, be it any car. I think even if you were to bring some Mazda MX-5s here, you would see just tons of mistakes. It is a very tough, very fast track to get around. We've talked about that so far all night. It's not easy to get around this place, let alone do it quickly. So mistakes, just single car mistakes, taking half of the field out of this already. I mean, only 7 cars left on the lead lap, and those 7 cars are separated by almost 40 seconds. Is actually the last of those is going to be Justin Ford, as Harley Lewis now sets the fastest time of the race. But actually, I cut to Justin Ford, and he's off in the grass out of turn 2. He's about to get lapped. Oh, he almost jumped in front of Harley Lewis there. He finally now get back down to the inside of the racetrack and let those guys go on by. Russ Eddy going to follow him. And the Atari machine now 1 lap down. So the final car on the lead lap now becomes Victor Vali, actually, in the 6th place. The number 6 coming down the downhill now.
Yeah, but going back up to this lead battle, it looks like Oldest has actually closed a little bit on Harley due to the lap car Justin Ford. Justin, a little different paint scheme. He's usually in a tie-dye car like in the IndyCar series, but here he runs an Atari 80s gaming-themed car, which is pretty cool. But Oldest now getting the run down the Sampogi straight, going to be on the outside, not the preferred lane. Going to try a switch back here into turn 1. Can't get it done, but Harley Lewis retains the lead.
Yeah, down the front straightaway, you see Harley Lewis doing a type of IndyCar kind of defensive, or I guess any open wheel kind of racing defensively. You want to keep that inside line down the straightaways as they slipstream to you. And as we alluded to earlier in the broadcast already, going around the outside in turn number 1 is just not preferred. But Otis Puticlis, even with that, he is still right here. He is piling on the pressure on Harley Lewis. And these two have actually started to walk away a little bit from Russ Addy. Russ Addy was a big player in this battle a few laps ago, and now he's sitting about 2 seconds back.
Yeah, so these top 2 starting to show what they're made of, and the cream always rises to the top, it feels like, as Harley Lewis still on a blistering pace. These guys are still running 44.6s, I should say mid-44s for the most part. That last time actually out of most of the field, a little bit slower than the previous lap. And we got a car around. Was that Spencer Madden again?
Yes, it was. The number 6 Ford machine, unfortunately, has met the tire barriers, the same tire barrier that he crashed in earlier and where Scott McIntyre crashed.
We'll get a replay up on your screen of what happens here to Spencer Madden. Emerson, I almost called you just Ardon. I apologize for that, but Spencer Madden definitely not having a great night.
Yeah, I just cut to his flipping 6 car. I don't quite know what happened. This has not been the night for him. Yeah, he got caught out on the crest also. So not only was he off track, now he got caught out on the crest. It's not been a good day. He was 4 laps down. I think he's calling it a day now.
So we'll go on board here with Spencer Madden, see exactly what happens to him. And you see the on board with the number 6 car. He's coming into turn 4 right here, catches the curb again. It's the exact same thing he did earlier on. Goes for a bit of a spin. And you said he was flipping here in a moment, so I guess we'll stay on board with Spencer Madden here as we get closer and closer to halfway. We'll see what happens to the driver out of Columbus, Ohio, as Aldis Puticlis goes even faster.
Yeah, I think Spencer just called it a day and decided to go head on into the wall right in front of Elijah Gracia and Scott McIntyre.
Oh my.
So a big flip out of the number 6 machine. Back up to the front, though. Harley Lewis, Aldis Puticlis, still battling for that race lead. They're now working the lap traffic of Elijah Gracia and Mark Bredbender.
Yeah, I think if Puticlis is going to get this lead from Lewis, he's going to have to force him to make a mistake somewhere else on the circuit. He's getting the great runs here down the downhill through the right-hander in the front, the Samposi straight. Getting great slipstream. Here's with some lap cars here. He might be able to use some of them as a pick to try to get by as they're coming up to lap Elijah Gracia in that 6th position.
So Elijah Gracia will likely play pretty nice with these guys. He's currently in the 6th position and actually not too far back of Victor Vallée. And I think that's by virtue of it. Yeah, it is by virtue of a pit stop. Elijah Gracia has come in for his pit service. So he's already good to the end on fuel. So he should cycle back ahead of at least Victor Vallée, if not as well Daniel Falkingham. And that's something to keep in mind here, guys, as we get ready for to enter into the back half of this race. They all still have to make pit stops aside from now. Elijah Gracia and maybe some others. Actually, Ian Wilson also down the pit lane. Looks like he's getting his service. Granted, he is a couple of laps down already. So something to watch out of these leaders when you come down the pit lane, because that's always important in these races, as Puticlis showed his nose, wasn't there to do it, so doesn't force it up the inside. But that always, it seems like, plays into the outcome of these races here, Cole.
Well, and Ian Anderson, he had actually crashed at the top of West Bend, I believe it was, or going into West Bend. So that's why he was on the pit lane. But it looks like Elijah Gracia is kind of holding these leaders up right now. But as we should be expecting these two guys to come in here soon for their pit stops. But it'll be a likely cause of when and where they'll take it, because Aldis may try the undercut on Harley. It's just a complete unknown at this point.
Right, it would be something. Right now, he's kind of staying right behind Harley because, guys, they get a bunch of slipstream down the Samposi straight. The inside looks very appetizing to go down under, trying to shoot the gap there. He tried to show it last lap. Again, he's been stuck on the outside through turn 1 so many times as one of the lap cars goes off, I believe, just trying to give way. As far as Elijah Gracia goes, him just kind of sitting here in front of these leaders, it's a kind of a product of him having fresh tires and the leaders being on 30-lap old tires.
Well, these guys don't usually actually take tires in this series. It's kind of a gentleman's rule usually not to. But he may have. I don't think Elijah, with his pit time, did. Only 10.9 seconds on the jacks. Well, I shouldn't even say on the jacks, but actually in the pit stall is now 3 wide. Down the front straightaway go Aldis Puticlis, Harley Lewis, and Elijah Gracia. Only 2 of those per position. Harley defending the inside on board there with Aldis Puticlis, as Aldis had to back out from the top lane and gives that position back, but they do get by the lap to Elijah Gracia. Now they're gonna have Victor Vallée out there. Well, I would say arrow screens, but not even arrow screens out there visors, as they're going to start to roll up to that, slower number 06. The next car ahead of him, don't worry, that's 23 seconds ahead. That's Daniel Falkingham. So they'll probably lap this 5th place car, Victor Vallée, but won't have another for a while.
Yeah, and these 2 cars ahead of the field right now have accounted for 5 wins in the first 9 races, as you see Victor take his pit stop now. But Aldis has won, I believe, 2 of those races, and Harley has won 3 this season. So just these 2 alone have accounted for over half of the wins this season. So they are proving why they are the top 2 drivers. And usually we have Scott McIntyre up here, but unfortunately he's having a rough night as of late. Actually, he's been having a rough go of late, as he's been, I believe he's wrecked in the last 3 races we've had on the Pro Mazda series. But those 3 guys have accounted for all the wins except for 2 of them this season.
Right, and then even on a track like this, they're just able to keep these cars finely tuned, so to speak. You see, Pudiclis has gone over that crest quite a few times, and has had the car wiggle on him a lot, and he's just been able to keep it under control. It just shows what kind of car control Pudiclis has, and obviously Harley Lewis able to stay in front of him for all this time with 28 laps to go now.
Yeah, this is great racing out of these leaders, and they're the only two cars that are even really close to each other, at least for position on the racetrack. And it's been that way since the drop of the green flag, since they rolled off of that standing start grid. So these top two just all over each other. Now, I will say Pudiclis did have to go on by Russ Addy, who's worth talking about right now because he's coming up the bottom of the hill now. Russ Addy also putting on a pretty darn good race, sitting right now in P3, and if he just doesn't wreck, he's got 17 and a half seconds back to Daniel Falkingham. He has no worries in the world. All he has to do is finish this race, and he gets a third place pretty much. He's going to finish on that bottom step of the podium. I don't think he has anything to worry about right now.
Oldest Pudiclis tried to move on the outside there, but Harley Lewis defended excellently, just like he's been all race. Oldest actually fell back the most he has been after he's tried his outside passes that time. He's fell back about, well, I'm trying to pull it up here, about a second almost. So a big drop in pace there for Oldest. You got to think maybe he'll try to pit now, try the undercut because he lost so much time.
I don't know. He did just get very wide and had to kind of gather the car back up. But right, the undercut also does sound very appetizing right now to just find any way around him because, I mean, if just by watching this battle, it has been very, very frustrating as the second place driver just to know you are there. You can feel like you're faster than him. He just can't find a clean way around him.
They are starting to actually separate it by just a little bit. The gap has gone from just 1 or 2 tenths to now about 5, so about a half a second between them. You have to wonder if Aldous Pudiclis is starting to just have to back off and save the rest of his tires. Of course, these Cooper tires do wear out. They're not on the new tire model if you're familiar with the iRacing tire models, but these tires can still get pretty worn out over the course of 60 laps that we've got on tap here tonight. So over the course of about 45 to 50 minutes that these guys usually run, those tires can certainly start to fail and lose grip. So you have to wonder if Oldest might just go ahead and save his tires a little bit. I say that, and then he gains a tenth on Lewis down the front straightaway. So we'll see what he does with this, but they do still have to pit, and that's another thing that Oldest could use to get on by Harley Lewis here for the lead. He could just pit earlier and run that next lap a little bit faster or what have you. And really, whichever of these two drivers is faster in the pit lane should end up walking away with the lead.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the old tire model. Actually, next season we will be switching to the F2000 car, which I believe I heard today is actually going to be released in the June build as one of 6 cars that are actually coming out. So a lot of new content coming to the service. That'll be fun. Definitely to have the F2000 cars. We are ditching the Pro Mazda car pretty much for the most part in official and most leagues, I think I've heard. So it's going to be interesting to have a new cars where the field is now on an even playground.
That will be very interesting as the field's so spread out. Only 3 cars on the lead lap, and the top 3 separated by 6 seconds. Again, Pudiclis, he's gone off a little bit. Yeah, these tires may become a premium here. I think now he's really going to think about pitting, try to think about backing off, kind of conserve what he's got to see what anyway he can try to maybe catch back up to Harley Lewis.
So Pudiclis has that bit of a bobble, loses some time now out of the downhill across the start-finish line. The gap is up to about 1.5 seconds, so that's certainly actually a big bobble, a whole second lost in that back half of the course. And that's certainly, it's not going to do him in. He can still go up there and drive up to Harley Lewis. He's got the talent, the speed to do so, but it's going to make it a lot harder because he was using that draft to stay with Harley down the front straightaway, or rather gain on him. He was using the rest of the track to stay with him, but he was using the draft down the front straightaway to catch him each time into one and kept trying to set him up for a pass. Couldn't quite do it each time, but was getting closer and closer and closer. It is worth mentioning, I think these guys are about to lap Victor Vallee again. They are, so Victor Vallee, after taking his pit stop, must have had some kind of other issue and is now, getting ready to go another lap down. So now 2 laps down for that number 06 car.
Yeah, I was expecting Victor to actually be a little bit of a factor there for Harley. Could have possibly slowed him down, but Victor concedes the position as they go down the San Posey straight. Victor with 2 tires off in the dirt there. that could definitely make a sweat come from the forehead of Oldest Pudiclus as he's really trying to just chase Harley down. He's kind of seeing red after going off a little bit, but just trying to run him back down is one of the hardest parts, especially at this circuit, because Lime Rock is such a drafting game. It's really hard to make up time once you lose it.
All right, as you allude to that, maybe the lap cardio 6 here, Victor Valley, he could become a factor here for Oldest Pudiclus, as actually he heads into the pit lane now. So this may be his quote undercut to see if he can get any advantage on Harley Lewis.
Definitely looks like it. So Oldest Pudiclus is going to come in for his pit service. We'll stay with him here as he goes up. Well, he shouldn't go up on the jacks. He should just get fuel and leave. That's exactly what he's doing. He's already on the limiter waiting to be able to leave his pit stall. So Oldest Pudiclus is going to take, wow, a 12.3 second stop. That's, I think, one of the slower ones. That being said, I was going off of Elijah Gracia earlier, who had just a 10.9 second stop, and he actually had to come back in for 2.4, which would put him exactly at 12.3 seconds spent in the pit lane. I do believe, right? No. It'd be 13 something. It'd be 13 rather, instead of 12. So, regardless, Oldest Pudiclus takes that longer stop, but I think he had to based on the fact that Elijah Gracia came back in after pitting the first time.
Well, Oldest also wants a little bit of security. You don't want to try to underfuel the car and then run out towards the end. We saw that happen in a Lucky Dog race a few weeks ago. So Tyler Langenberg, he ran out of fuel. So definitely don't want to underfuel the car. But Oldest Pudiclus trying to get everything he can out of his number 666 Pro Mazda.
So if Oldest Pudiclus coming into pit lane, when does Harley Lewis come in to kind of follow suit, not allow Pudiclus to get an advantage on him? Both tires not being a factor. You do want to kind of spend less time on pit road, so maybe he goes longer and has to take less fuel.
We were on board there for Russ Addy's pit stop, so now everybody on the racetrack aside from Harley Lewis and Justin Ford has made a pit stop. So we'll have to wait for both of those guys to come down the pit lane and get their service, get their fuel, and be back off and away as we now get to 19, coming to 18 laps to go this next time by the stripe. Harley Lewis has Ian Wilson out his, well, I was going to say windshield again, out his visor rather, as we're going to be coming around to complete 42 of 60 laps. When does Harley Lewis come in? Right now, as he comes down the pit lane. That very tricky pit entry as well. Go back to, I got to think, man. Geez, I lost the racetrack we were at on Tuesday. VIR. You go back to VIR and it turns out Jem Aiken wasn't even trying to pit when he ended up pitting, but he made certainly an entrance into the pit lane. If you caught that Tuesday night as the Lucky Dog Sim Racing League went to VIR, Jem Aiken was actually trying to adjust the fuel load that he wanted to take and ended up wrecking. Now, back to this race, Harley Lewis just had a 9.9 second stop, which is the fastest I've seen from anybody coming in for full service. So you have to wonder if he has just underfueled the car, or if he has saved and will save enough to go to the end, because based on the other drivers' pit stops, he may not have enough fuel.
Yeah, that could definitely be a factor into this. And Oldest made sure he got enough fuel in that car, but Oldest actually now falling off like way back to Harley Lewis. Harley Lewis just now over the uphill as Oldest is now coming over it. So a major gap in between those, but you got to worry if Harley actually underfueled that car and we'll have to make another stop.
Well, here's the thing also with if he did underfuel the car, if he did indeed do that, he now has about a 5-second advantage over Oldest Pudiclus. He can start backing off a little bit earlier, maybe try to save some more fuel. Will it be enough if he did underfuel the car? Who knows? I guess we would just have to wait that out and see. But yeah, quite interesting that there was a severe difference in pit stop times with only a 2-lap difference in between them.
I mean, we're likely talking about a couple of gallons difference there, so or at least probably a gallon. I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to save a gallon in these Pro Mazdas around this place. It's so much on throttle time. I just don't think you can save that much fuel without giving up that spot. 4 seconds now, the gap between first and second place, as Harley Lewis going to have to deal with Scott McIntyre down the front straightaway. Scott McIntyre going to hold the outside lane. He's going to go right on by Harley Lewis, and he's going to take that, I shouldn't say take that first position. He's just going to roll on by that lap car now of Scott McIntyre. is so used to Scott McIntyre being in the fight for the race lead. Usually that would be a pass for the race win. But Scott McIntyre just not having his day. Out here running in the 7th position, and that's behind Justin Ford, Victor Vallée, Elijah Gracia. 3 cars he should absolutely be well in front of here, Cole.
Yeah, definitely. And Scott actually was the winner of that Mid-Ohio race we referred to. I said it was Oldest, but it was actually Scott. It's always between those two, usually racing for the win, and Harley's really stuck his nose in here as of late, winning the last 2 races. So Harley really been on a roll here lately, trying to just get some wins towards the end of the season, catch up into the points battle. But the points battle has all been Scott McIntyre and Oldest Puticlus. So this is definitely going to hurt Scott in the points, and Oldest is definitely going to extend that lead.
Yeah, as well, I was able to see the points. 3rd place, Russ Addy, still hanging there in 3rd place. Obviously, the gap will expand a little bit, but maybe he'll be able to catch Scott McIntyre a little bit, and maybe have something to say about 2nd place with a few more good runs here.
So I do want to apologize to our YouTube crowd. Unfortunately, it seems like, and we've just noticed this, unfortunately, we never went live over on YouTube. We've been live to Facebook, but it seems like we've had an issue with the YouTube stream. So apologies there to anyone who usually watches on YouTube. Hopefully you've found your way to Twitch or Facebook. Seems like we've had a problem there. We've been live to Facebook the entire time as this battle has gone on for your top few spots. And really, it's just been the top couple of spots. Harley Lewis and Oldest Puticlus battling a little while further on in the race. And since then, things have just not been... well, I'll be honest, not all that exciting, but that's all right because these races don't have to be that. These races really are just a matter of who can go out there and lap for 45 minutes. They're around there the best, and right now Harley Lewis has been the best driver on the racetrack. I think Oldest Puticlus has looked fast and certainly has beat on the gearbox a little bit of Harley Lewis, but Harley Lewis has been most consistent. I haven't seen a mistake out of that driver all race long, unless he underfueled his number 4, but that I'm not so sure about that one just yet. We'll have to wait and see how that one pans out. There was a slow car on the outside of turn 4 there. Not sure who that was. Actually, it was Justin Ford as that damaged double O gets back rolling.
Well, Oldest Puticlus now has to deal with the one thing he's clashed with the past 2 weeks, Scott McIntyre. I was actually in the Laguna Seca race and saw those two clash firsthand. Scott's been very vocal about their clashes as well. He's been very vocal just with Elijah and everybody in the group about clashing with Oldest. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here as Scott actually defends the inside, which is weird. But, very tight. But Oldest is going to get the move around the outside. So no clash this week. It looks like still very close between the 2 cars on the track.
Right, I think it's still just kind of a gentleman's thing, a respect thing to kind of just still kind of move out of the way. He did kind of defend down low, but maybe he was trying to get out of the way. That's debatable. What this does do for Scott McIntyre, though, he does move into the 6th position there as they went past the double O Justin Ford. So now Scott McIntyre, he's about a third of the track back from Victor Vallée, but 6th place right now shouldn't hurt too badly as compared to where he was before.
So it's about a 4.5658 second gap now between 1st and 2nd place. The battle you're watching on your screen, not even for position. Scott McIntyre, I think, just kind of pressuring Oldest Puticlus a little bit, saying, "Hello, I'm here." And I have to wonder if that is actually the message being sent, or if Scott McIntyre is just off in La La Land right now trying to get through the race, because obviously, again, not the best race for him tonight. I think just wants to get this thing over with. 11 laps to go. It'll be 10 this next time by, and you have to imagine that Scott just wants to leave Lime Rock Park and get this thing over with.
Yeah, I think Scott definitely wants to leave here and get back to his winning ways as soon as possible, but you definitely got to wonder if he's actually trying to send that message to Oldest saying, like, hey, I'm here. Just because we can't make contact doesn't mean I'm going to pressure you into a mistake or anything, but it's definitely a cat and mouse game between these two all season.
Yeah, you do want to always keep your presence in your rivals' minds when it comes to racing in general. Just always kind of make them aware that you're there. And actually, Scott McIntyre closing the gap up the crest. Does he have another go at Oldest? That wouldn't be very gentlemanlike to do, but I guess not out of ability.
Scott McIntyre all over the gearbox, gives him a shot down the straightaway, bump drafting here at Lime Rock Park. A couple of rivals, and he tried to hit him, I think. I don't know what else you could be doing right there if you're Scott McIntyre. You're laying on the gearbox of the driver down the straightaway, and you stay on him all the way into turn one. You're either trying to mess with him or trying to hit him, one of the two. There's nothing else you could be doing. Scott McIntyre all over Oldest Puticlus. Now, this is great for us, but this is going to be a nightmare for league admins and these two drivers in particular. You have to wonder what might be being said between them and will be said after the race. Of course, these drivers, considering we're on the iRacing.com simulator, they can talk to each other. They can talk to each other over iRacing chat. They can talk to each other through third-party chats, be it TeamSpeak or whatever else. Whereas usually the only thing you might have to communicate with the driver would be your right hand, and a certain gesture out the pod here. But they separate for now, so you have to wonder if maybe race control talked them down a little bit, as we now have 8 and 7.5 laps to go.
Well, I definitely think if we were able to use hand gestures, then the universal #1 sign would definitely be coming out of the cockpit of the 666. I'm not so sure if Scott was just kind of agging on Oldest to see if Oldest off track there, so Scott's going to catch back up to him. So it looks like part 2 of this is going to get interesting.
It definitely will. Again, he was right there, and he is being staying in Puticlus's mind, kind of distracting him from what's actually at stake. Now he's about 5 seconds back from Harley Lewis, but he did lock him up getting into 1 that time. I'm not exactly sure he was trying to hit him, but he was trying to kind of stay there, send a message, because locking up your brakes, generally you're trying not to hit the guy, but who knows? I mean, this could get interesting once again. He'll have the slipstream.
So Scott McIntyre continuing to pressure Oldest Puticlus. Now, Scott McIntyre is 2 laps down. He's 2 laps behind these guys, doesn't have to worry about them, but Scott McIntyre isn't quite about that, it seems. He's definitely trying to pressure his rival. We're just going to say it. If you think back to the old NASCAR games, these two would be seeing red over each other's cars right now, and they've just become rivals over these last few weeks. I think it really starts back at Watkins Glen here, Cole, where they had a bit of a tumble, I guess you could say, entering the boot, with Will Klein and Elijah Grassi involved in that one as well. I think that's really what kind of got this thing started.
Yeah, sorry, I was listening to a message from Elijah there, but yeah, it looked like it started out as the NASCAR 04 rival system where they just made a little contact, got mad at each other, but now it's turned into a full-fledged NASCAR 05 scenario where you can just press X or whatever button it was to intimidate down the straightaway. So definitely intimidation coming into play in this rivalry.
Another thing that just came across my mind is maybe he's not trying to. Obviously, he's not allowed to make contact with Oldest Puticlus. But maybe he can force him into a mistake, force him into an off track where he loses third place or second place to Russ Addy, who's now in third place, or even worse, crashes out. And then the points hit for Scott McIntyre obviously doesn't hurt as much or doesn't hurt at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something we had mentioned. He could just be trying to pressure Oldest into literally anything, be it just going off the racetrack a couple of times and getting inside of his head, or completely wrecking that race car, or what have you. So as we come to, well, that was 4 laps to go. It'll be 3 the next time by. Scott McIntyre definitely making his presence known, even if he is 2 laps down. And I go over to the points on my own screen here, my own monitor. These two are top 2 in the points. Russ Addy currently 3rd. That being said, they're separated by some 24 points, and that margin going to widen as Oldest Puticlus does lead Scott McIntyre in the point standings by 24 points and currently runs, 5 positions ahead of him and 2 laps ahead of him. So that margin only going to get wider.
Yeah, definitely. And we only have 5 races after tonight, and we will cap off this season at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so that's going to be an interesting one, especially if these two take it all the way to the wire, because both of these guys, not really known for their oval racing, but they're more well known for how well they race these cars on the road courses, so it'll be interesting to see that fight being taken to the historic oval of Indianapolis. But It'll definitely be interesting to see how this plays out over the weeks. I believe Oldest has a 25-point gap currently over, or 24, sorry, 24-point gap over Scott McIntyre. So Oldest definitely wants to grow that gap over the next 2 or 3 races.
Another thing, entering tonight, Puticlus has had a 39-point gap over Russ Addy. If these two start to tangle throughout the rest of these races, Russ Addy could become a prime contender in this season.
Absolutely, and we talk about some future races coming up for this series, and Iowa Speedway going to come up next week for 100 laps, or sorry, in 2 weeks for 100 laps. And then as we have our first race of June for the Pro F2000 series, we'll head to Montreal, up in Canada, for the Montreal Grand Prix around Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. A couple of weeks after that, we'll of course go down to Sebring for round number 13 of 15 in this very long championship over the course of 30 weeks for both the Pro Mazdas and the Indy cars. Of course, alternating each week. We've missed the last few Pro Mazda weeks, as it were, but we've been here for all of the IndyCar races as we come to the white flag that time by Harley Lewis takes the white flag. We'll stay on this battle right now with Oldest Puticlus and Scott McIntyre so close to each other. But after Sebring, the last 2 rounds of the Pro Mazdas will be Road America, a draft battle of a 4-mile racetrack, and Indianapolis, where you already mentioned, Cole. That'll also be its own little draft battle, and that'll be a show, honestly. We had the IndyCars there not too long ago, and that was kind of a mess, a lot of cautions, but it was still really good racing while we were green, and it's going to be even better with these Pro Mazdas. Now across the line, out of the downhill, out of the final corner, Harley Lewis going to make it 3 in a row. Harley Lewis wins at Lime Rock Park.
Oldest Puticlus is going to take second. Scott McIntyre being the first lap car across the line. I believe he will take the 6th position. Third place, I believe, is going to go to Russ Addy, as we only had 3 cars there at the stripe on the lead lap. Elijah Garcia comes home 4th. So just a bit of a spaced out race this week, but it was definitely an interesting one for sure.
Definitely interesting, as Victor Valley, he'll come across the start-finish line 1 lap down in the 5th position. He'll round out the top 5. Yeah, definitely very interesting. Again, it's just a product of this track just being so difficult but so fast. You kind of don't think of it as being a difficult one just kind of by looking at it like on a map. You think, oh, that seems pretty simple. No, these drivers, they're very talented, and they had a hard time here today. Again, 3 cars on the lead lap.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and run down through your results real quick. Of course, Harley Lewis, we mentioned, winning this race over Oldest Puticlus, about 5.6 seconds between those two. So we thought Harley may have underfueled his car. Not at all the case. He ends up coming home with an even larger gap than he re-entered the racetrack with. Russ Addy comes home 3rd. Elijah Gracia 1 lap down in 4th. And it's Victor Vallée 1 lap down in 5th, Cole.
Yeah, and then 6th place is going to go to Scott McIntyre, as we mentioned before. Justin Ford brings home the number 00 Atari car in 7th. Mark Bredbender is going to round out the 8th position. Ian Wilson 9th. Daniel Falkingham is top 10 and the first-year retirees.
Rounding out the list of retirees, we have 11th position Spencer Madden, followed by Brian Antonio in 12th, Donald Poole 13th, Richard Cologne 14th, Tom Mercier 15th, and John Morgan 16th. He'll round out the finishing order here at Lime Rock Park.
So as things wrap up here from Lime Rock, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back to you with interviews from your top finishers. We've already got Harley Lewis and Oldest Puticlus to talk to. We'll be talking to a 3rd driver as well. Make sure you stay tuned for that, as this is Pit Stop TV with our live coverage tonight of the SRCA Pro F2000 series from Lime Rock Park. We'll be right back to you after this short break. And welcome back to the Lime Rock Park. This is post-race coverage now of the SRCA Pro F2000 series, and we have 3 drivers to talk to. They've been waiting on us so kindly for the last few minutes. We're going to start off with race winner Harley Lewis. Harley, do you have a copy?
Yes, sir.
Well, Harley, just what a race. You know, I was thinking back. We haven't been here for a few weeks, so unfortunately, I've missed your last couple of wins, but I was thinking back to Mid-Ohio as the last race where I really saw you as a breakout contender. Now tonight, you show yourself to your third, to my understanding, third consecutive win here in the Pro Mazda Series, and a pretty dominating win, too. You were battling there with Oldest for about 40 laps, but then after the pit stop, you just set sail.
Yeah, I kind of had a little bit of pace left in the tank, but there's no point of risking it. Coming to the top of that hill, really easy to unbalance the car, and it's quite fatal. So once, unfortunately, he made a mistake, I just went hammer down. Luckily, was opening a pretty good gap, and then I guess I gained a second in the pit as well, which was complete luck. Pretty good around this track, though. With the chicane version, I believe I have the world record for the lap, so I'm pretty familiar with the track anyway.
Well, definitely, if you're holding a world record around any configuration of this place, you certainly have it figured out to a point. And you showed that tonight. Of course, you've been one of the top contenders all season here in the Pro F2000 series, but tonight really putting on a clinic, and it sounds like the last few weeks, over the last few road courses, I think Laguna Seca Road, Atlanta, and now here at Lime Rock Park, just putting on a show.
Yeah, not too bad anyways. There's some pretty good competition at the front with Scott and Aldous now. It's kind of going a little bit back and forth, but there's some good battles.
Yeah, so actually from somebody who's not even involved in that, we were talking about that most of the evening because that was really the biggest headline to talk about between Aldous Puticlus and Scott McIntyre. As a third party who's not even involved, what's your outlook on that situation?
I don't know too much about what's going on. I mean, it's just racing, you know. Everyone's going to think, you know, they were done wrong. You know, there's always pointing the blame. I've been involved in that too. It just happens. Hopefully, they could bury the hatchet and we can just get back to some clean racing.
Well, you had a pretty clean green run tonight, leading, I believe, all 60 laps, maybe sans 1 or 2 over the course of that pit stop, but I think you even led those. So, firstly, again, congratulations. But as we look to Iowa, how do you feel about Iowa next week, 100 laps, or sorry, in 2 weeks, 100 laps on tap?
How do I feel about Iowa? I have a feeling Rick Raven will show up and dominate us. I'll be lucky to finish, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, hopefully you will finish out of Iowa. Again, 100 laps on tap in a couple of weeks for this series. But before we get there, who do you have to thank for your big win tonight?
Well, thanks to Elijah for putting on the league, you guys for broadcasting the race, and as always, Carbon Racing.
All right, so that is now 5-time winner Harley Lewis after his big win tonight at Lime Rock Park. Cole Fralick, I believe you've got our Latvian, Oldest Puticlus, on tap.
Yes, I do. Oldest, you got a copy.
Yes, I do, mate.
Well, it was a good race for you. Take us through how you got that second place finish.
Well, the best guy won this time, I couldn't do anything with Harley, really. He was faster and I was just holding back, it wasn't really pushing, because, to be honest, when I saw this track on a calendar, I knew it will be barely, basically impossible to pass, because this is too short of a lap to pass properly. The straight is not long enough, and if both cars know what they are doing, and that turn 1 is basically no pass zone there.
Well, we saw you kind of have a little clash there with Scott McIntyre, and before the race, we were informed, you two were informed to stay away from each other. So, do you know what the whole deal there was, or just he was just trying to get in your head or something?
Drivers have some misunderstandings and stuff. Like me and Harley had some misunderstandings, but I guess we both are grown-ups at least, and Scott is basically too salty to admit his own mistakes, so he just wanted to kill me, and that's what it was. I was braking after first board, so you couldn't brake any later, and he ended up still half a car in my car, so
Well, looking towards Iowa, what's going to be the plan there? Because you said yourself you need to get a little bit better on ovals, so is that going to be the game plan going into Iowa, or are you going to just try to go for the win as usual?
Well, we'll see, because when I was racing the old Dallara, the very old one, the first one, that Iowa was my favorite track, so I really loved it because this crossover taking was amazing. It all depends really on the setup on this one. If the crossover take will work, I will be fighting for the win, I think.
All right. Well, before we let you go here, who do you got to thank for your second place run here tonight?
I will take Elijah for the league, you guys for broadcasting, Harley for racing clean, and our team Kinetic Racing.
All right. Well, thank you, Oldest. That was your second place finisher tonight, and I believe Emerson, you're going to actually be interviewing Justin Ford, who finished P7 tonight.
I should be. Let's see. All right. Hey, Justin, you got us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
All right. So P7 tonight, but talk to us about your journey. You started P15 or P16 on the grid, and you went up. You're halfway through the field. So how did you get up to the 7th position tonight?
I just tried not to drive off into the grass too much, which I did quite a few times, unfortunately. But it was pretty much about keeping it off the wall, not dying up the hill, and just letting everybody else take themselves out for me.
All right, that's gonna be my next thing. What was it kind of like? Kind of seeing your competition drop like flies left and right of you, physically and figuratively.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of stressful when they bounce out in front of you and stuff. But it was actually kind of just fun because then everybody else is making mistakes. So as long as you kind of just keep your pace, you'll make it through.
What was the strategy for you today? As far as your what was it? One pit stop? I don't assume you would take a second one. If you did, what would it be? What would it had been for? And just your take on the strategy here today.
Yeah, you only really needed the one pit stop, so it was pretty straightforward. I'm just going to keep running as long as I can with fuel, and then just kind of pit towards the end and see how it plays out.
Was there anything else you could have done from your point of view to maybe improve your position, maybe get Scott or Victor there at the end?
Yeah, I definitely made a few mental mistakes. Like in the first corner, you really shouldn't mess up there, and every now and then I would just get a little wide, and then once you get wide there, it's onto the grass, and it's a ways away for you.
Right. Is there anybody you'd like to thank for your opportunity to race in this series, your 7th place finish tonight? It was quite a run up through the grid, I might say. Anybody to thank for that?
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for hosting this and broadcasting. It's awesome, and Elijah for running the league, and definitely just want to, thank the woman for race night privileges and stuff like that. It's been fun, and I enjoy it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Congratulations on your 7th place finish here tonight, and good luck to you in your next race.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Have a great night, guys.
And so that was Harley Lewis finishing 7th place. And so that's your top 2 finishers, then your 7th place finisher, getting an idea of how things went on down the grid. And I'll tell you what, that was a perfect interview, I think, out of all the Spooderclips. No matter whose side you're on, that's great to hear that kind of emotion out of this series and start to get that kind of drama going on. And of course, these road races sometimes get so spread out, you don't usually get that kind of drama going on. But that's great to hear that we've got something stirring up, at least for us and everybody watching. Of course, for these drivers, it might be a nightmare. For race control, it might be kind of a nightmare, but Aldis definitely, I think, laid his thoughts out on the table. Hopefully soon we can talk to Scott McIntyre, hear his side of the story. Maybe even Russ Addy, being he's teammates with Scott McIntyre there, and I'm sure he's got his own opinions to go along with everybody else. So definitely, I think pretty nice to have that kind of turn in action there, Cole.
Yeah, all of these guys, Harley Lewis, Oldest Puticlus, Russ Addy, and Scott McIntyre, they all race official Pro Mazda 4 points. So really, they are used to racing each other. But when it comes to this series, and Oldest, like he said, he clashed with Harley last season, I believe. But they've made up, and Oldest, I don't know what Scott's got against him, what vendetta's happening, but it's been an interesting one to see how this has played out, as they've clashed 2 of the past 3 weeks. Didn't really clash tonight. In a way, they kind of did, but it was just a little shove down the straightaway compared to the last 2 weeks, which resulted in, I believe, both cars getting damaged in the last 2 wrecks. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this plays out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. As far as for me, this is my first time witnessing kind of this tangling between Puticlus and McIntyre. But what I did see today is that even when McIntyre being 2 laps down, he still had like the mentality to still just kind of mess with Puticlus. That kind of shows just how much they're in each other's heads. That even being 2 laps down out of contention, not even battling for position, you're still there just trying to get anything you can to ruin his day.
Absolutely. So that will conclude our coverage tonight of the SRCA Pro F2000 series from Lime Rock Park. Pit Stop TV, thanks to you for tuning in and joining us for tonight's action, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. Join us next Tuesday, actually this coming Tuesday, as we head to Road America with the Lucky Dog Sim Racing League, and next Thursday when the SRCA IndyCar World Series comes back to action, I believe at Pocono it should be. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, www.facebook.com/pitstoptv. That's one of our streaming platforms. You can also follow us over on Twitter at pitstoptv_, on Twitch at www.twitch.tv/pit_stop_TV. Another one of our streaming platforms, and our final streaming platform, at least for right now, YouTube, by searching Pit Stop TV. This has been Cole Freilich and Emerson Ardon with me on the call tonight. I'm Andrew Cardinale IV for Pit Stop TV, and we will see you next time here on the channel.